Greetings, fellow Beyonders. I am your humble host and scribe, Sven, and this is Beyond the Worlds Beyond. The primary purpose of this series will be exploring the lore and story within these campaigns. In this episode, we'll be looking at the 8th episode of The Wizard, the Witch, and the Wild One, titled The Catch. We'll be doing a quick summary of the episode and then diving into the lore questions that it raises and those that it answers. Before we get into the summary proper, let's just give massive credit and congratulations to Taylor on the sound design for this episode. They've all been great, but this one stands even above the rest. If there are awards for this sort of thing, then this should definitely be nominated. We return where we left off with Pain attacking Ursulon. Thankfully, our Wild One is made of sterner stuff than Pain might think, and the attack, while painful, is far from enough to finish the fight. As Suvi arrives and turns the balance of power in the party's favor, Pain flees into his office and begins destroying evidence. Though, even there, he is not completely safe as he is attacked by the fox and, thankfully for our hearts, does not manage to strike back effectively. Soon, Ursulon has destroyed the door and Suvi's magic missile has ended the fray with Pain barely clinging to life. Spared by Ursulon and Ame, though outed to the Chantry for his crimes by Suvi, Pain flees into the city. The party then takes the opportunity to rest and stock up on some magical equipment before their scheduled departure that evening to visit the Derrick. As they depart for the Derrick, Suvi notices that Abjur Galani is present in the city, seemingly meeting with the governor, and that word of the conflict at the Chantry has already reached their ears. Reaching the Derrick, the Calibel Nautomantic Apparatus, a massive structure of steel and magical crystal, Moro is more than happy to gush over his creation and its results. Activating the apparatus, he reveals its purpose, capturing a large magical sea creature that we can now only assume is the true form of Naram. From its magical essence, coral grows, and this coral is harvested for the magical items that the Chantry is producing. With the party watching this horror unfold, we end this week. Before we start asking new questions, let's take a look at the ones we've asked before and see which, if any, we now have answers for. We now have confirmation to our long assumption that the Derrick was being used to capture and or drain magical essence from a spirit. We still don't have final confirmation that said spirit is Naram, but it's pretty safe to assume it is. Which means our theory that the working of the Derrick was what resulted in Rima's fury and the kudzu is also near certainly confirmed. We still don't know what Suvi's final reaction to this will be, and if it will put her in conflict with the rest of the party, but it certainly did not seem pleased. We have also again heard the term Calibel, now in the naming of the Derrick itself, but sadly the context still does not give us a final answer as to how it is derived. It may still refer in some way to Port Talon, perhaps an older name for the city, or perhaps to the harbor and waters that surround it. My first new question, interestingly enough, now goes back to the very first episode of the main campaign. Here, when attacked by Pain, Brennan says that this is the first time Ursulon has felt wizardly magic worked upon him. As an aside, how good was that description? There is something beautiful, symmetrical, yet static and sterile about this magic that unfolds. However, back in the first episode, Ursulon was struck and injured by the magic of the peddler. Is this a simple oversight, or does this mean that the peddler was not wielding wizardry, but some other magic? Was he a sorcerer, a warlock, maybe a bard? That would certainly be fitting. Though, mechanically, of those options, only sorcerers have access to Magic Missile normally. Although an arcane trickster rogue does have access to the spell, and would also fit his aesthetics, though if they do exist in this world, that still leaves the question of how they draw upon their magic. The other new question, since this episode is more action and shopping than lore drop, is what has brought Galani to the governor? We know Galani has been active in the city prior to Suvi's arrival, so it is likely not yet related to that, though it may be after the meeting. Galani also does not seem to be working with Moro at this point, though perhaps investigating the Derrick is also involved. I suspect we'll find out soon enough. Well, soon enough if our heroes return to Port Talon without becoming enemies of the Empire. That's all for this installment of Beyond the Worlds Beyond. As always, please feel free to throw your own questions and theories in the comments, as I love hearing what others latched onto. Also, please consider liking and subscribing if you have not already. If you want more Worlds Beyond Number content, you can also visit my Patreon, link below, to find my appendix and timeline projects, all of which are free and publicly available. I've been your host, Sven, and thank you very much for listening. Farewell for now, fellow Beyonders.